Welcome back, guys. So today Dea woke up, said she wanted carnitas. So I'm gonna make my Dutch version of carnitas with ingredients I can find here locally. And we're gonna do this with a little bit of a vinaigrette-ish coleslaw, make some salsa from scratch, and do tortillas. Since we can't do tortillas in protocol, I'm making cheese tortillas, or you can just have them on the side. So let's get started. All right, guys, so I went to the butcher shop today. I urge you guys to find your butchers. They always have the coolest stuff. You can always kind of invent, find new things. This is pork that's Iberico, which was from the region of Spain. It's really nice. The best carnitas come from Michoacan in Mexico. They take a really long time to cook. You're usually looking at about 14 hours to prep everything and then get it served to the public. We have that time, but I don't have the copper pots to cook everything in. So this is gonna be my version, my rendition of it. Basically, the way that I always make carnitas is I go to the butcher's and I find the cheapest cuts of pork that I can find. So what I have here is going to be about a pound or 500 grams of pork shoulder, pork butt, so 500 of each. And then they had these little nice looking baby back ribs. So the bone will give it a little bit of nice flavor. And usually I like to add a lot of lard. I asked for lard, they did not have lard this time, but they did give me this smoked and aged back fat. So basically this is the back part of the pig, and you have still the skin on it, which in Mexico they call that cueritos, which, oh, they're so good. They kind of melt in your mouth the longer you cook them. There'll be all kinds of fat that'll get nice and rendered out of this. It'll become nice and just deliciousy. So let's get rocking. First things first, take your pork. When you're cooking any sort of meat or protein, try to get it to room temperature. Otherwise, with the cold protein, the hot pan, it tenses up the protein molecules, the protein cells, and it gets super tight and chewy. So try and let the meat rest at room temperature for a bit. Let it get to room temperature. Once you've done that, add some salt. Now, this has been salted and smoked, so this has a whole lot of salt already, but you still want to make sure that you're kind of seasoning throughout. The salt helps break down the protein, so it kind of gets it nice and more tender and juicy, if you will. So I have bones on here. If people are freaked out about bones, you can cook it without bones. Bones are good. They add a lot of flavor, especially when you're cooking for longer than an hour. So don't be afraid of using the bones, guys. So once you've salted it, one of the biggest mistakes that I see people do, people seem to get lazy with the fact that they have a crock pot or a slow cooker and they just let the meat in there and they let it cook for 8 hours. It's an extra step that takes maybe 2-3 minutes, guys. You don't need that much time. Sear your meat on all sides. A, it gives a little bit of texture to the meat, and B, it allows it to become a lot juicier when you bite into it, so it's not like that dry mush that you usually get when you leave something. You're smiling because you've done it so many times, haven't you? I love it. Whenever you cook anything in the slow cooker for more than 8 hours, it's going to taste exactly the same no matter what the fuck you're whatever the bleep you're cooking, right? Take a little bit of extra time, guys. So the first thing I'm going to start with is going to be cubing up my back, right? It's extremely hard, right? That's why most people don't like to buy it. It's most of the times where it just kind of sits there. This stuff is awesome, has so much flavor. You can add it to soups, you can add it to whatever you want, and it was super cheap. So this right here cost me €1. So I'm going to cube it up. You can see how thick the skin is. Right now it's extremely hard. You would not want to chew on it, but you'll see that as it starts to cook in its sauce and we start to kind of render everything out, it'll get nice and chewy. It gives it a good texture. Some people love the texture, some people hate the texture. For me, I could have like a whole taco with just that stuff. Oh, and it's so good. It's just this pure fat and skin, and oh, it's amazing. Just want to render. Oh, smell that though? Fuck, it's so good. Oh, that's why I love cooking. I just love the smells. The reason I'm cooking these first is to render the fat, so then the leaner cuts of meat will have some fat to kind of caramelize on. That's really the biggest reason.
What is that?
It's the back part of the pig. So you have the pork belly and then you have the back. And so it has the layer of fat. And so basically they take it.
So it must be super hard, right?
Yeah, it's extremely hard and the skin's like it's like leather thick. So it'd just be chewy if you just eat it. So you need to cook it for a long period of time. People never know what to do with it. Usually they're like what you add for soups and things to get the flavor.
Right. That's where I know it from, because that's what they use in those thick soups.
Yeah, for like lentils or...
France, yeah, that's exactly what they use.
Like the beans. The beans with the sausage is basically this, and they just cook it for a super long time. So once you kind of get all the fat off, we can start adding these to the pot. And we have a nice hot pan. So now, guys, you can follow through with whatever cuts of meat you want. See, then you get the nice sizzle. When you guys have your meat sizzling away, guys, and searing up, I'm going to take 2 onions. I'm just going to keep them in the halves. I'm going to start to create a little bit of a base of what I want the juices that the pork will be cooking in to kind of get some flavor out of. So I'm going to do 2 onions, 1 full head of garlic. Again, I just need to smash them, let all the oils out and be able to peel them. Some people like to leave the peels in them. I like to eat my garlic after it's been cooking in oil for a really long time because it's awesome. It's like candy. So I like to always peel my garlic cloves, but I don't necessarily need to have them cut up or anything or chopped, just smashed and peeled. Ooh, it's so garlicky. Ooh. Beautiful. You can see you get some nice little caramel points on the meat. So when we're looking at pork, guys, the ribs have lean meat, some fat. They'll give some nice texture to the carnitas. The pork shoulder for me has a lot of good fat, like it's more marbleized, so it has a lot more flavor to it. The pork butt is usually what you get when you get like pulled pork in the US, things like that. It's usually the pork butt. It's just lean meat. So you see how there's almost no caramelization, no fat into the leg. So that'll be more of your, we call it maciza in English, in Spanish, sorry. And it's a lot leaner. So you need to have a lot of fats that kind of go in there. Otherwise it just gets dried out or they just become kind of mushy. So again, that's also why it's important to keep the sear on it. So I'm adding some bio ghee. I wanted to get a bunch of lard. The carnitas are usually cooked more like in a sous vide style, if you will. So that's like a French term of low heat with fat. And they're basically poached in fat. That's what you want to do with the carnitas. I couldn't find all of the lard that I wanted to. So I'm going to add more fats, mainly for these guys right here, the pork butt. That has a lot of flavor, tastes delicious, but for the most part, it's very lean. We have the meat in the big pot. It's starting to cook up. Now the next step to do is add some orange. I'm going to add 2 orange juices. Some people, again, like to put the peel. It gives it a little bit of acidity and a little bit of bitterness to it. So I'm going to do half. I don't like that much orange peel. Sometimes it overpowers the flavor for me and it gets too much into the meat. So I just like a little bit of the juice. I like the meat to hold its ground when I'm eating it. I want to taste pork, not marmalade, orange marmalade with meat. So juice of 2 oranges. We already have the salt in there from the pork belly, the pork back that we put in there. So I'm just going to add in a few pepper grounds, whole corn pepper, black pepper. So I would say about 10 peppercorns or so, and oregano. I like oregano. It gives a great flavor. Maybe like 1 tablespoon or so. Go by feel. There's 2 kinds of people in this world. Those that love cilantro and those that hate cilantro. I'm a lover of cilantro. If you're a hater, don't add it. Most people only ever eat, or this is coriander if you will, or Chinese parsley, whatever you want to call it. most people just ever use the leaves, not the stems. So I cut the stems that I'll be using the leaves for the tacos afterwards, but I cut the stems off and added them to the actual pork. So now that we have our whole pot going and simmering, we're just gonna let it go, guys. So this is a set it and forget it. We're gonna basically have it, now that it's coming to a boil, we're gonna keep it at a very, very low simmer. Cover it, don't open it. I would say every 10-15 minutes I'll show you guys a recap of it. But if you can, try and keep it like this for a good 45 minutes to 2 hours. If you have really low heat, you can go to 2.5 hours. It's just gonna make the meat break apart more and more. All right, guys, so we have the meat cooking, slow temperature, very low heat. Has a nice conduction of heat, so it's basically like a soft boil. It's gonna be steaming. Try to not open it too much. It smells so good though. Don't rush it, let it cook. I would say minimum 45 minutes. I'll show you guys later when it's gonna be actually done. So while that's cooking, we're gonna start doing a little bit of a coleslaw. In Mexico, they call it repollo. Repollo is usually just basically cabbage shredded up, and all they do is that. I'm gonna make it a little bit fancier since we're not gonna have delicious corn tortillas to go with our tacos or our carnitas. I'm gonna make like a little bit of a citrusy, kind of acidic coleslaw, if you will, just so that we can have something to kind of fill in. And when we go for the cheese taco, it's not too greasy and you just feel overpowered with fat. So I just bought regular cabbage. You can do Napa cabbage, you can do whatever cabbage you want. This is all they had at Albert Heinz. When we're doing slaws, guys, something that I always mess up and start doing on the fly is I'll just start pouring things into my slaw if it's already been cut up, and then I taste it. I think it's usually a little bit better to start with a base vinaigrette, taste it, make sure you like it, and then start adding the slaw in there. That way, if you mess up, you can always throw it away, start brand new. Nobody's gonna get angry. Worst comes to worst, just add mayonnaise to it. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that, guys. That's gross. So we're gonna start the vinaigrette. I just went to the store, got some different types of vinegars. I'm gonna basically blend them all in there. We'll see what kind of taste I want. I'm thinking Carnitas, Mexican. It's need to be a little bit spicy. I may add a tiny bit of mustard into it. I want the oregano to kind of come through, and I just want it to feel nice and crisp, right? This is white wine vinegar. We don't need too much. Apple cider vinegar, tiny bit. Thinking maybe a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons, guys. Again, I'm not a baker because I'm not good at measuring things. I just kind of pour and taste. And rice wine vinegar. So it'll be a triple vinegar combination there, huh? That sounds like a fun night. I'm gonna grab a little bit of olive oil. I just got this one, Italian extra virgin olive oil. Mix it up a little bit. Usually 3 to 1. So again, it's gonna be more like a coleslaw, cabbage salad, whatever you want to call it. Add some salt. I'm going to add some oregano. The oregano, I like to put it in my palm, and I like to mash it up. It lets out the oils a little bit more, and it's not so chewing on grass if you get like a leaf of dried oregano. Add some pepper. We're going to go with a little bit of coriander again. Tiny bit of onion powder. And just because I have it, a tiny bit of yuzu. I mean, it's here. We might as well just use it, you know? Tiny, tiny drop. So from there, again, always tasting. So grab your spoon, mix it a little bit. This is obviously going to be a concentrated version of what you'll have when you have it all kind of coated into your cabbage. It's not bad. Needs a little bit more vinegar. Like another extra 4 or 5 tablespoons. And I'm going to add a lime juice. So when you have a lime, if you roll it, starts to break up like those little juice pods. Is this what they're called? Delicious pods. Cut it. We'll go with half a lime juice and then go from there. Yes, I'm using the same spoon. I don't have germaphobes in this household. It's okay. Yeah, see, that's much better. That's really nice. So now obviously this is the base of the vinaigrette. I'm gonna add in a spicy red pepper. I would like to have serrano peppers or something more Mexican. This is what they had at the store. It's what I'm stuck with. Don't judge me for it. As we add this, as we add a little bit of cilantro, as we add some red onion to it, the flavors, the oils from those vegetables will also start to infuse in the vinaigrette, giving it a lot more flavor. So I think this is going to be a Thai red pepper. It looks a little bit too big. I'm just going to make sure there's not too many seeds because I like spicy. Some people do not. We're just going to cut it into some nice, these are called Juliennes. They're not very professional looking. And I don't really care. We'll just kind of chop them up a little bit. Give it some nice flavor in there. We'll grab a small red onion. Make sure that we get all the skin off of it. Basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to Julienne the Onion.
Yes.
Yeah, Julien. So we start, if you were to cut straight down, you're going to get like some longer pieces, especially at the beginning. So I start at an angle and basically I follow through the circumference, the circular part of the onion. And as I start to get closer to the end here, then I flip it back down and I do the same thing. And so basically you just start at one end. And this is why it's important to have a sharp knife. And so basically you go, and then once you have that long piece, and then you can start again. And that's it. Try and keep it as uniform as possible. And throw it in there. Move it around. Most important part, the cabbage. So I'm going to take the core out, half of the cabbage, take the core out, a couple of the leaves that you don't like, and basically you can go at it many different ways. I always like to go this way, even though it's round. You're not supposed to cut when it's round, it's better when it's flat, but I like to go like this, and basically you just kind of start to shave. I like thicker parts of my cabbage. I like my cabbage to be nice and thick. That's what she said. So good. Oh, I crack myself up on these shows, guys. I like them thick just because I like there to be a bite, especially for right now. If it's like a young cabbage, like a young slaw, it's going to be crispy, crunchy. But if you keep this overnight, the juice gets to go into the cabbage, and so then it's not just mushy. There's nothing worse than a mushy slaw. So this will always maintain its texture. It's nice and thick. It can last in there for like a week, and you'll still have a crunch to it, which I hate when there's no crunch to my cabbage. Kind of break it up. There needs to be a crunch. The other way you can do it is if you have it flat, same thing that you did with the onion, right? So you just kind of start following through. There we go. So this is about half a cabbage. If you have a big family, do a whole cabbage. For this, for us, this would be more than enough. I'll grab a little bit of cilantro. Cilantro is always delicious. Again, I'm a cilantro fan. Just take the bundle, fold it in half. You want kind of rugged cuts on it. I don't like to cut it too much. I like to leave the leaf as it is. And you just mix. You want to make like a fusion that would be really cool would be like if you have like access to like green papaya or green mango, you can like shave it in there. Oh, that'd be kind of good. Kind of like a green papaya Carnitas queso taco. That's like a food truck taco fusion right there. People pay like $6 for that right there. There we go. That's good. Perfect, guys. Tiny bit more salt. And again, I'm always kind of salting throughout. You don't want to over salt from the beginning. You don't want to over salt at the end. So I'm always just adding a little bit of salt everywhere I go. A little bit of pepper. Get a nice taste. That's perfect. Has a nice bite to it. Nice and crisp, nice and citrusy. It's a little spicy. That's beautiful. That'll be so good. So we'll let that sit. Again, the more it sits, the more all the flavors will come together. So I'm going to let it sit for right now, room temperature, since we're going to have the tacos ready probably in about 45 minutes or so. So let everything kind of come together. But you can leave it in the fridge overnight. If you have a big group coming, do a massive bowl, just set it in the fridge. This is probably good for a week or so. It just probably keeps getting better and better every single day. All right, guys, it's been about 10, 15 minutes. I really can't tell time very well. Might have been longer. Time to check in on the carnitas. Oh, and look at that. So they're cooking nicely. You'll start to tell when they're getting more done. Oof, that steam was hot. Is if you can see how right now if I push against it, they're really, really hard. So the protein basically just gets tight. So now we're going to start breaking it down. So that's why we need a good couple hours just to kind of keep cooking them, kind of keep moving them, whatever doesn't stick at the bottom. When you do this at big pots, like big copper pots in Mexico, like Dea's dad and uncle do this amazing thing where they'll just cook it with a bunch of lard, and you get the meats, and basically you'll have this delicious carnita feast with the whole family. Once it's done cooking, then they'll separate the fat, and then all the little burnt pieces of meat that sticks at the bottom with fat, they take that and they'll refrigerate it, and they make homemade tortillas, or they'll make eggs, and they'll use that to cook. Oh, it's so good. It's the best thing in the world. We'll do that. End up doing that. There's a lot of uses for that. All right, guys. So let's get started with the salsa. Very, very simple. Tomatoes, jalapeno, red pepper, spicy pepper. Jalapenos are like gold in Holland. It's very, very hard to come by. I found a few, so I got all that I could. This is my last remaining good jalapeno, and an onion. So 6 medium-sized tomatoes, 2 peppers, onion, garlic. Doesn't get much harder than that. I'm going to basically fry up everything. Nothing needs to be cut too precisely. I'm just going to throw it in there. Smash that garlic up. Keeping the seeds into the peppers. Big pieces, all I want them to do is start cooking. If you have a barbecue or open fire, that'd be best. I'll probably end up torching them just because it gives that nice charry texture to it. But since we don't have that ability right now, I'm just going to put them on a pan. Basically, I'm just trying to get all the essential oils, if you will, of the peppers to come out and kind of start changing their flavor profile a little bit. It'll soften up the spice a tiny bit. It won't be too spicy and it won't feel raw. If you have an actual burner, you can always just put the tomatoes in there and just kind of hope that they burn up a little bit. But it gets hot. And just let them burn. But it gets messy. So that's always an option though, guys. I like to just throw everything in the pot. Hot fire. And bring out the big boy. So Butane Burner, guys, these things are awesome. Home Depot has some really cool ones that are much more powerful than this. This, I think the whole bundle cost me about €6 at the Chinese market. I love my Chinese markets, I gotta tell you. Basically, you have this piece right here that can come off. You have the can, so you buy the can, you find the little adapter, you put it in, you screw it on, switch, and you have a sick torch, which is so much fun. Who doesn't like playing with fire? So as these are burning on the bottom, just hold the fire to it. You can see it blisters very, very quickly. I want the charred flavor more than anything because the charred flavor is going to give a nice little texture profile, a little bit of darkness to the salsa. Now, as cool as that is, it's going to cook it very rapidly, meaning the inside's still going to be cold, and I want everything to kind of change as it cooks. It'll become warmer. The sugars will kind of come out a little bit more in the tomatoes as you start to cook them. So in order, it gets poppity. So in order for it to kind of be cooking all the way through, I'll do a mixture of the charring and just kind of letting them cook naturally. And just let them hang out there for a while. Nice high heat. This is also a great test to see if it's going to be spicy or not. So you know it's going to be spicy. If you start breathing and start coughing, you know it's going to be spicy peppers. If you're not coughing and you want it to be spicy, add another pepper to it. Yeah, see how it starts to get, you getting the cough there? Those are spicy jalapenos. I like it. So we've let the tomatoes, the onions kind of cook up. Now we get to blend them up. Something about burnt onions that always smells so good to me. This is my first time using the blender, so it'll be an experiment for both you and I. This blender, yeah, ever. I like cilantro, so I'm gonna add some cilantro, fresh cilantro in there, guys. Add a little bit of olive oil, like a good 1/8 of a cup. Salt. Half a lime juice. Easy squeezy lemon peasy. Bam. Cover it up, and we'll just start to blend it in. Beautiful. That's not bad. It's missing a little bit of acidity. I think the lime juice is a bit much. I'm going to go for rice wine vinegar, just a tiny bit, a couple drops. Still needs a little bit more salt. Now, with salsas like this, again, if you can make it, this will last you maybe a couple of weeks. It'll sit there. Remember, the longer it sits together, all the flavors, all the ingredients fuse together. So if you go too salty right now, tomorrow will be extra salty. So keep that in mind. As it cools down, as the flavors kind of blend together, you're going to notice that it's going to be a little bit saltier, a little bit spicier, a little bit more acidic the day after. So just always be careful with that. That's delicious. I'm going to call that a finished salsa, guys. We're good to go. I would like it spicier, but I have a French man with me and a big white dude. I don't know if they like spicy.
I do. Just not Mexican spicy.
So let's check in on the carnitas. They're looking delicious. So you can see we call lazy boil, right? It's kind of like a low medium heat. Few bubbles coming up throughout. You can see all the grease kind of coming through. You can see the pork fat is starting to get nice and rendered. See how it's starting to almost break apart. Really the bigger pieces that I'm looking for is that pork butt and seeing if it's going to break out. And as you can tell right now, like it's still pretty tight, looks pretty dry. So I'm going to give it probably another few. We'll fast forward. We'll show you guys what it looks like once they're ready to come out. We pulled out the carnitas. I let them cool down a little bit. You don't have to if you already have people ready to eat and everything. You can basically just take them from the pot, chop them up, start serving them up. These have been slightly cooled, but it's still all good. We have the slaw, the salsa, onions, cilantro. What we're going to do now is start making a couple cheese tortillas. This is something that in Mexico called quesatacos. I would say it's one of the best things in the world. It's just melted cheese. I've yet to find the perfect blend. In Mexico, they have the blend, but I think it's just regional cheeses. So depending on which part of the world you are, you need to find your own blend. Every time I go to the grocery store, I find different cheeses, and I make my own little blend of cheese. So in here, there's a Swiss fondue cheese. There's Gouda cheese. That is young, Gouda cheese that is old. 48 plus. I don't know if that means months aged or what it is, but what I'm looking for is high protein content. If it's too much fat, it just gets greasy and it won't be a palatable tortilla. It'll be more like a crisp, like a tostada, which is, hey, listen, more power to you. You can still do that as well. I'm gonna get the meat kind of starting to get nice and brown. Now, remember guys, I had beef ribs on there. I had pork shoulder, I had pork butt. I had kind of like cueritos going on, the pork bat and the skin. So in order to cook all of it up together, depending how refined you want it to be, for me, I don't mind getting a couple bones. You can go through, take the bones out if you want. I don't mind getting bones. In Mexico, if you go, they'll even give you a taco and they'll just put like a whole pork rib on there, which I think sounds like an amazing idea. You can see how the meat just wants to come off. And it's fucking good. Tastes really good. So do as you will. I like to just grab some of the fat that's already been sitting there, pour it on. That way you have your juices so shit can get nice and hot. Start grabbing some of that meat. Throw it in there. You can see it wants to get nice and sizzly. So let it. So as that starts to cook, the magic for the cheese tortillas is letting them cook and being patient. Something that people have trouble with, including myself, especially when you see the cheese melting. So all I do is I'll just grab a handful of cheese and I'll just put it on there. You just let it sit. So we'll try making 3. I feel like I'm on a suicide mission right now, making 3. Usually I make 1 to 2 at a time, guys. This does kind of require some patience. It's a little bit slow making. If you don't have that patience to do this, you can always just melt it on top of the meat. It's always easier. But presentation wise, it's kind of cool to have a cheese tortilla. These are cooked at medium-low heat. So this is usually when people start to panic and want to start moving it. Right now it's just melted cheese. If you start moving it, it's just going to move with you and it's going to turn into a glob of hard melted cheese. So all I'm doing is letting it caramelize. So you remember how we did on the first episode, the scallops and kimchi episode? Click here to watch that video. You let the protein start to caramelize on the bottom and you'll get that crust. That's what we're going to do here. So you can try moving it around a little bit and you can see how it still just kind of moves in. So you can kind of start setting separation boundaries between the tortillas, but see how it starts to stick? So that's when you know that probably don't move it yet. Let it sit for a little bit. And so you can see how all the fat starts to separate. If you have like Monterey Jack that you can find in the US and stuff, it's a lot easier to do with that type of cheese. But since it's harder to find good cheeses here, you can see how this is coming. Everything's kind of just breaking apart. I mean, come on. Who doesn't want to have some of this? Right? All the fat. Nice, good proteins. That's good to go. Let's start taking a look. They're starting to get a little bit better. I shouldn't have done 3 in a row. I'm trying to highball it right now, guys. We shall see how this works. Again, it's more fun if you try to play on the dangerous side, right? So see how it starts to kind of peel away. They start to move, but then you have to be careful it doesn't stick to each other. Otherwise, it just becomes too thick. Bam! There you go. With a little quickie. Let that sit. There's another one. Numero dos. Now I'm sure there's much better spatulas that we can use for this, guys. This is what I have at home. You improvise. Perfect. Put that on the plate. It's going to look kind of greasy. It is what it is. It's cheese. Put a little bit of the slaw on there. Cut it up. Salsa. Some onions. Some cilantro. And that's that. Coach, you want to try it?
I'm just slow.
Yeah. You want some? Forgot, guys. Always add a little bit of lime juice because I'm Mexican. Just a tiny bit. Good, huh? So enjoy, guys. Try them out. Let me know what you think. You can add as many variations as you want. You can do roasted vegetables and just put melted cheese on top. Doing the cheese tortillas is sometimes a little bit more of a pain in the ass. Something fun to experiment. If you want to have that taco feeling, which I like to have the taco feeling, try them out. Let us know what you think in the comments. Let's give it a try. I could sell for some of this. When you eat a taco, taco stays upright, head tilts.
All right.
Yeah, that's messy.
Oh my.
You need a towel.
So good to me.